Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of In the Future. And today's topic, which was something that Max has been passionate to speak about for a little bit of some time ago, we're going to explore the idea of guaranteed universal income and the profound impact it has on society and our psyche. What we're going to do today is we're going to delve into unfolding narrative of how we think UBI is going to shape the world, how it's going to provide potentially financial security, but what does that mean to people's personalities, drive, and economical standing in the society that we live today, and what that means to us that have to navigate through AI and what life is going to be day to day now that we're going to have this idea of universal income. If it comes to fruition, we don't know. It might not even be the U.S. who brings it into fruition. It might be another country. But we're basically going to explore what that means to us. And yeah, Max, I wanted to get your initial thoughts there. If you can imagine a world where every single citizen has some amount of money, dollars, no strings attached, and financial security of some extent, what do you think that world looks like?
That's pretty interesting to think about, right? Like, can you use an actual, what would life be like if every citizen in the United States had an extra $500 per month in their pocket, or an extra $1,000 per month in their pocket?
Yeah.
Would that drastically change the lives of people who are on the lower income scale? Can that extra $500 help you pay for childcare?
Yep.
Can it help you cover the cost of groceries so that people are not living on the street, right? Or so they're not living and feeling what it's like to live in extreme poverty. That's really the hope and the vision for universal basic income, or UBI as it's commonly referred to. So it is a very passionate topic. Obviously, with the last presidential election, it became a hot topic because Andrew Yang, he really brought it to the forefront. There were some issues with the way he was kind of laying out the plan. Obviously, it takes a long time for something like this to actually develop and make its way through Congress, through all of the bureaucracy that we have. But if it comes to fruition, I think it's a much better world, right? It's also interesting to think about what are the negative side effects of it. Are there any, right? And that's something we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, do you want to start with like economic impacts, like maybe like the economic, like what does UBI mean? Unless you had some other path you wanted to take, but maybe the economic impacts of it, like wealth redistribution. I think that's the one that comes to mind generally with people. Like the pros and cons of that. I think you brought it up a little bit ago where you said, does that change?
Let's define it. Let's actually define it first for people who don't know it. So I have it pulled up here, right? Perfect. So what is universal basic income, UBI? Yeah. It's a social welfare proposal in which all citizens of a given population regularly receive a minimum income in the form of an unconditional transfer payment. In other words, without a means test or need to work. That's a fundamental difference versus something like the food stamp program, or SNAP as it's called, where you need to prove that you have low income coming in, and as a result you get the government subsidy. With UBI, there's actually no conditions on it, which it's harder for me to wrap my head around, because I feel like there have to be conditions, right? If you make $500,000 a year, should you still be getting that extra 500 in your pocket? Probably not, right? So it's
no real difference, right? I agree. Right? There's not. What's the extra 500 going to be? Well, Andrew Yang, I think he was trying to go for 1,000 for every American.
Or it's 500, it's 1,000. It's essentially as high as the system will support. Yeah. And then you sort of have to start thinking, okay, well, where does this actual funding come from? And a lot of the proposals, they are positioning it as income tax, right? So like right now, out of every paycheck, we pay for Social Security, we pay for this and that. There's a very growing group of people who just don't believe like that, people our age, by the time we retire, are we still going to have Social Security?
No idea.
Probably not. It's a program that's very quickly becoming bankrupt, and that's part of why you see that the retirement age keeps rising every year. Is because they want people to continue to work and add and fund Social Security instead of just depleting it.
Which is scary if you think about how much the average American has for retirement. That's what they would have to lean on. It's not a lot. I think the number is pretty low, if I'm not mistaken. Like less than 100K for sure. I think, which is really scary to see what'll happen to that.
You're saying what people have saved up
for retirement? Yeah, for retirement. Oh, yeah. I think it's less than 100K. Yeah, which is that. I may be wrong with that number, but
it's. I mean, I think it depends on the state, because areas around the country are very different in terms of what you actually need to survive.
Oh,
but
no.
Yeah, people.
Never mind. I was wrong. It was 330,940.
But that's nothing.
Yeah.
Can you live on that?
Yeah.
Think about these things. There's the population will continue to live longer, so that money needs to last you longer. Is that still doable? I don't know. What is the value of $1 20, 30 years from now? Will it be much less? Right. So you have some inflation kicking in there. And also, like, how much is Social Security? It's like $100 a month or something like that. Like, it's a drop in the bucket of what you actually need to survive. So yeah, that's and also, like, healthcare is becoming much more expensive, right? As you saw, Congress passed that contributions to your healthcare savings account have increased in anticipation of medicine and medical costs being much more expensive in the future.
Totally.
Right? So, like, everything that you're saving now, like, let's say it is that $300,000, how much will it be as strong of a financial position as we think it is today 30 years from now? Probably not. Right. And so you need some kind of subsidy for people. And I think the needle is really pointing to this universal basic income.
Is Social Security basically UBI to some extent for people who are 65 and older?
And to some extent, yes, it is.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But it's conditional, right? You have to be 65 and older. That's
right.
The thing. I would say, so what's really interesting is I like talking about things that happen in our lifetime. And during the pandemic, the printing of the stimulus checks, that was a form of UBI in action, sort of though, right? Because it was still conditional. You were receiving that check if you were below a certain income threshold, but so many people qualified that they were able to, right? Was it based on income, or was it?
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to remember. I don't remember if I got a check or not.
Well, you might have gotten the first check, but then did you get the second one, the third one, the fourth one, right? Like all of those.
Every American got the first check.
I think so. I don't know. But whether they did or they didn't, it was still. The point I'm making there is, even though it was conditional, Americans really got a taste of what universal basic income might be like, right? Just getting this check for not putting in the work or doing anything like that. And like many things, once you get a taste of it and it's something positive, you really want more of it. And so I think if someone like Andrew was running on this platform in the 2024 election, the appetite for it is much more powerful, is much stronger than it used to be.
Yeah, 100%. But I guess I feel like has it lost steam? I feel like I used to hear more about it. I feel like Andrew Yang really brought it into the spotlight. And I don't know. I feel like it's not getting as much attention anymore.
It hasn't. I understand what you mean by it's lost. It feels like it lost steam, but it's actually being tested across. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I believe there's 2 states and 2 areas of the state where it's actually being tested.
Alaska was one, I think, right?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, historically, like in the 70s, this was tested. Finland had a test. And they were testing 2 really interesting things. One was if you give somebody a check, like monthly or weekly, or if you give them a lump sum once a year, what is the difference in the mentality of that person and that group as a result of it? And then if you compare it to people who didn't get any universal basic income at all, how did they feel knowing that these people got it? So this is a very interesting program. It has a lot of different angles to it, and so obviously it has to be thoroughly tested, because once you roll that out to an entire nation,
you can't roll back.
Yeah, you can't roll it back.
Well, it does look like it was. By the way, it looks like Alaska did
Nice.
did implement it. And it showed. So there's two places. So there's positive and negative ones. Positive looks like just a quick snapshot. Finland did a small pilot program, found no decrease in work hours, reported improvements in well-being and financial security. Stockton, California also had positive impact. Kenya as well, but we have some negative or concerns or challenges, like Alaska had it. So I'm getting mixed signals from Alaska. Alaska basically had a permanent fund dividend that basically shares the state's oil revenue for every Alaskan, providing like a modest but regular income. So they said the program has been instrumental in reducing poverty, but then another article says has been criticized for its uneven distribution and limited impact on poverty reduction. So I don't know. Somewhere around there's the truth. But it seems like Finland, it worked pretty well. And some of
Finland tested, if I'm remembering correctly, didn't Finland test it for like 12 years?
They tested just for 2 years. And it looks like the Netherlands also did a small pilot program, but found no changes in employment or well-being. Meaning, not that it had a negative impact, but it just didn't really improve people's lives at all. So it seems like there's no one result, right? It seems like it's all situational. Maybe it's cultural. There's other aspects that we don't really consider.
It's also just by the nature of it being a test, right? I think the way people think about it and how they change their behaviors or don't change their behaviors is influenced by knowing that it's a limited time test.
Right.
Versus, okay, you're going to be getting this check for the rest of your life every single month.
That's a good point.
What's going to happen then, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think this is for people who are traditionally part of the labor workforce, and they'll continue to work and kind of contribute to society. I think this will really help people who are kind of on that fence, right? Where maybe like things are really, really tight and difficult, and you can't raise a family on it. You're living in poverty. You're borderline living, losing your house. I think it will make a drastic impact to those people's lives. I also think for people who really don't want to work anymore, right? Like people who are kind of, like they have that mindset. I think they will take advantage of something like this, right? And that's that's really the concern from the right, which they don't.
Productive output.
They're not huge fans of welfare in general, and this is a very big part of that. Okay, so let's go ahead.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna say? Well, my thing I was gonna say, what if we explore just for a moment, based off this, like what do we see as potential pros and cons of the wealth distribution aspect of UBI? Unless you had something else, another direction you wanted to go.
We could let's explore that direction, but I'll ask it through a different lens. I'll ask it through the question of what will lead to the United States adopting universal basic income. And I think that I'm sure there's more, but there's three main points that I'm kind of thinking of. The first one is this exactly what you said. It's this desire for wealth redistribution, right? The wealth gap between the rich and the poor has really. Did you almost fall?
No, I just did this.
Has really widened, right? And that has happened many times throughout history. There has been some kind of redistribution as a result. But I think because we have social media, it's just so much more prominent, right? You can the numbers of how much Jeff Bezos makes and how much the average American makes that information is much more free flowing, right? And it irks people, right? Yeah. So I think the desire for wealth redistribution is one of them. I think people will be very agreeable to hearing that. Let's say, okay, we want the wealth to be redistributed from the wealthy and given to the average American and the poorer Americans. And if that money comes from rich people, there's a very strong appetite for that, right? And I think that will kind of ease people's tensions and like what we saw with Occupy Wall Street, right? Like that feeling, that rage that people had where we're even in the middle of a financial collapse. Yeah. The wealthy were just earning so much more money as a result of it, and I think that pain sticks with people. So that's one reason why
so that really results. Yeah, so that results in like a level of tension, like the reduced income inequality being probably one of the number one things. Reduce the societal tension, kind of this like even to some extent, it might even reduce how divided we are to some extent, right? Because we feel less of that anger of like the left does this, the right does this. Look at that. It's all, it's your fault. The blaming factor of it. If people just feel like they don't need to be concerned about their basic needs and well-being, and the salary that they get on top of that is contributing to a more equitable life where they can buy things and enjoy things, like basic things. Not rich, right? Not saying this is going to make you rich, but like, okay, your groceries are covered, part of your rent or your part of your mortgage is covered. Cool. Like, I can use my paycheck for actual, like, I can take my kids out to have a good time. So I'm not stressed about
this disposable income and one less headache.
Disposable income, exactly. Less income and disposable income, where it's like, I'm not going to stress out about like the news, the news cycle. I'm going to go like take my, go with my friend and go get a burger. Like, I'm not stressed out about it. So you're right. That's interesting, and I think that impacts everybody. Like, in the sense of, like, whether it doesn't matter where you live, urban, rural, like suburban. Like, I think everybody could benefit from having that reduced inequality. But I do think that the ones that'll feel it the most will definitely be the people in the lower income brackets than, let's say,
at the bottom,
middle or high, right? I don't think those lives, maybe society, like culturally or societally, like life will change for them, like people's attitudes, and they can feel that energy, because that energy is pretty contagious. But I think that's a great impact. I think that would be a great benefit to society for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's one of those points that helps the longevity of the United States, right? Where if you ease the tension between the classes, you avoid some anger, some frustration, and who knows what violence that may lead to in the future. So I think that's point number one. Point number two of what I think will lead to UBI is people are just living longer, right? Like we started this episode talking about this. You have people are working their entire lives to build up a nest egg. If you're saying that the average is $300,000, that's not a lot, right? Especially if people are, like, right now the average age where people die, I believe, is 78. It actually decreased by 2 years after the pandemic. Well, okay, what if it rises to 85? Right now you have an extra 7 years where you have to make your nest egg stretch a little bit farther. So I think people living longer will trigger the need, right? The financial need for UBI. What do you think about that one?
I agree 100%. That's going to be the case, and yeah, it's not going to be enough, like you said, without retirement. So I think I think that will completely aligned with that will lead to UBI. Do you have a third one? I've got another one, but I'm curious.
Ooh, I have a third one, but I want to hear yours.
Okay, I was thinking the other one that will lead to it is, well, job displacement due to automation and AI potentially.
Oh, so that's the third point.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. With AI and everything that's happening, like a substantial portion of like traditional jobs, probably like jobs like yours and ours, will, we're going to need some sort of safety net like UBI. And I think people in our roles, or people that are impacted that didn't think they'd get impacted, are going to be the ones trying to drive this forward. Like, hey, we need UBI.
I don't know that your role and my role are the ones are the ones that are truly going to be impacted by this. I understand what you mean, and I partially agree with you. Right. I think where UBI will really make a difference in this box of AI erasing jobs or displacing jobs. I think about truck drivers, right? Truck drivers are, first of all, they are right in that category of people who are on the bottom of the scale for pay, and their jobs are very quickly going to be replaced by automation, right? Just like trucks driving themselves. And also, that's the cohort that's living paycheck to paycheck traditionally, and so they're really going to benefit.
Wait, truck drivers don't? I thought truck drivers made okay.
They've been making okay in the last few years because of the shortage, and as a result, like, to attract more of them, they've been paying more. And the reason there's a shortage, if we just want to touch on that topic, is because people our age don't want to do those jobs anymore, right? Like our fathers, their fathers, they're the ones who wanted to do it. So you have a shortage of interest of people wanting to become truck drivers. It's a very specialized skill set that's not very transferable, right? Like how do you reskill a truck driver? Do they become an Uber driver? Well, Uber's ultimate plan is to make all of their cars automated, right? So like, what does that person actually end up doing? That's a true definition of job displacement. And unless you have a fourth point, I was thinking of one while we were.
Well, yeah, we got technological advances is basically automation. Social and economic unrest, I think we kind of covered with the first one with inequality. It ties to the theme of inequality. The changing nature of work, again, is tied to automation. Longevity and aging population was a solid one. I didn't think of that one. I'd forgotten about that one. And I think the fourth one it's not a fun one or anything like that, but I think it's to your point at the beginning. Pilot programs being successful in those case studies will lead to UBI being implemented and spread out a lot more, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Okay, and then here's the next thing that's kind of very interesting to me, and really where kind of my passion for this program stems from. So if you think about the psyche of the human being, right? Of the human being of a person. That's fun what you're doing over there. it's like it's meditative.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice
to watch. It is sort of like a fidget spinner.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that fundamentally people want. How do I phrase this? I think that fundamentally people over time people become uncomfortable with just accepting money and not having to do anything to earn that money, right? Mm-hmm. One of the major things when people retire, one of their complaints is lack of purpose. What am I waking up in the morning for? I don't have a job that I've been going to for the last 30 years anymore. What is my purpose to exist, right? And retirees, they get Social Security and all of that. Does that sound that I'm hearing?
Oh, probably Ella in the back.
No, okay. I'm like, I don't have any women.
I have noise canceling headphones, so I can't.
Okay, so if you buy the premise that people cannot just accept money, they need to earn it in a way, right, in order to feel fulfilled. I think that one of the interesting benefits that you're going to see as a result of UBI is the rise of volunteerism, right? Like, I think people right now there's a lack of people going out and volunteering. You have some employers, like big corporations, that are starting to dedicate days for volunteering because there's just like a lack of it. Historically, people volunteered all the time, whether it was in the form of signing up to go to the military, or just taking care of things because that was just like the American way. You help your neighbor here and there. I think one of the benefits that we might see is people going out and volunteering just a little bit more, so that they feel like they're doing just a little bit of effort to receive this universal basic income. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that. Actually, I think I can see. Yeah, I mean, giving people the purpose to go ahead and volunteer and give them the safety net to do it without thinking like, nah, I'm not gonna volunteer. Like, fuck that. I need to work. Sorry, Kirst. But yeah, I think that is something that would be like a very positive impact culturally, even, right? Because people are doing things in a way that's meaningful to them. Helping others, very out of this, like, people might have actually get into this mindset of not like, oh, look at me, I'm so fancy, I've got all this money, like, look at my Gucci and like chains and showing off, this narcissistic kind of like TikTok vibe. And maybe it might be more about this giving type of environment. Yeah. Side note, I actually feel like even in our society, though, those who give more are actually the ones not only have like a theoretic, not a theoretic, it's not the word I'm working. Like, they may not only, I think they're the wealthier, not just in spirit, but I think when you give more, you actually get more in some ways. Not like you don't give to receive, but I think just naturally the way the world works is that when you're more of a person who puts out there, the world naturally kind of gives you more. So that would be awesome to see that translated into a world where UBI exists and people are giving out more, and I think people would feel more fulfilled, people would be giving to each other, so people would receive more, even if and people wouldn't focus so much on receiving more. And I think that would give like kind of a positive mindset. Like people, like receiving more would be like a just a plus, so it feels much larger than when you expect people to receive when you expect to receive things, and ultimately makes everybody more richer in spirit and in like mindset, mentality, positivity. So yeah, that might be a positive impact. That's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the downstream effects of, just like holding the door for someone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or like helping, your elderly neighbor carry their groceries upstairs, right? Like really small things, or
Mm-hmm.
just doing one good deed a day that you don't really tell anyone about.
Yeah.
Um, it's I've observed this quite a bit. It's quite interesting. Like when someone does a good deed for you, you end up doing a deed for someone else without feeling the pressure to do so. It's kind of like that positivity builds on
Compounds, yeah.
itself, and it's very cool. And I know what you mean by like it's not really spiritually, right? But it's like it's your psyche.
Your psyche, yeah.
It just feels better. It feels more kind of in line with kind of with where things should be, right? It's a
Yeah.
little bit like what if the United States went back to kind of how it used to be, where like neighbors look out for neighbors. Like we didn't have alarms, people didn't have locks on their doors. Even it was just like neighbors looked out for neighbors. When someone went off to fight in the military, you had an entire parade for that person, because it's like this person is going out there to fight for us, right? He's representing us. We've really lost that, right? Like there's no more draft. And as the military has really changed from so I was going to say sword to sword, but like being on the field to more detached, where we're just flying drones now.
Mm-hmm.
Things have changed, right? And I think we need a little bit more of this, like this quilt to kind of come back together, like the quilt of America, right?
Totally, I agree. We do have 3 minutes left, roughly, right? We don't have to be exact. But I did want to touch on potential drawbacks from a wealth redistribution aspect. At least there's other parts of it we can explore, like job displacement and stuff like that. But I think you nailed one of them, where we were talking about. I don't know if it was before this, but we've spoken about this in the past. Is the funding challenges? How to fund it sustainably? Is it tax dollars? Do people pay higher taxes on their paychecks? Will the rich let us tax them? Finally, in order to be able to deliver something like that. I think funding, that's number one. I think funding the challenges is one. The number two is, I'll go through them pretty quickly, risk of inflation. So the critics of this, I'm not saying that's the case, argue that injecting a huge amount of money, just kind of like we saw with the COVID checks, like the pandemic pay checks that people received that you mentioned, that could lead to some level of inflation. Again, I don't think it would be like a huge number, but it could be like a 10% of it, 20% of the cause of inflation, not 10, 20% of rise of inflation, just the cause of it. And then the other one is this one you're very familiar with because you mentioned it before, the potential of like a regressive impact on productivity, right? By design, it's like, are we not progressive enough? Could working harder not benefit the person or wealthier individuals who want to try to go harder, right? Those are just potential, and again, these are not what I believe. Those are just like, as an observer, these are the potential challenges that we get from wealth redistribution of UBI through UBI.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. The inflation one, from what I remember looking at this a long time ago, I don't think there's been any evidence that inflation in any way is a risk of this, because if you're taking money from the rich and you're redistributing it to the poor, it's not like you're printing more money into circulation of the economy. So I don't think you would get inflation. If anything, you would actually get more spending, right? Like if someone has an extra $500, what are they going to do with that money? They're going to go to a store. They're going to buy
exactly. Stimulate more of the economy, the local economy.
Yeah, and I exactly. So like local economy, I think is very important. Again, how does that connect to volunteering? Is there opportunity for something good to flourish as a result of this?
The cushion to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. One of the other things to consider is this going to replace subsidized welfare programs like SNAP, like food stamps? Will people have to choose one?
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of interesting. One of the other points that I would love for people to just kind of go in and research. Oh no, go ahead, go ahead. I'm interested
No,
in what
no.
you're gonna say.
I had like an ADD moment where I thought of an idea. I want to hear your thought, but okay, I'll say it really quickly. It's what if it was an opt-out system?
Okay.
Opt-in, opt-out system. Could that still be successful, or does that kind of do you think in your head that kind of throws it out the door because it's like, or throws the idea out the window because we won't get the amount of funding that we would want if we don't have the participants. Meaning, if I opt in, I pay the higher taxes, but I also get UBI to some capacity, right? Like maybe I'll pay, like if I opt in to pay the taxes for UBI, I get to benefit from UBI. But if I decide to opt out, I have lower taxes and higher pay. Now, I'm just saying it out loud. I can already see the constant is because a really wealthy person would be like, yeah, I'm not going to be part of this at all. So never mind. Yeah, tell me your idea.
I don't even remember what it was. No, I think ultimately, this is where we're gonna end up, right? And I do think that one of the bigger contributors to this will be AI, which causes job displacement. And really, I think there's this very, very strong, just like an angry feeling from people, who are not at the very top, who are not part of that 1%. They're just angered by how extraordinary the gap has become. Like, even back in the day, historically, like, the local baron, he would make X% more than, or X times more than the local serf.
Yeah.
But those numbers have just shifted so much. Like I think Jeff Bezos makes like I actually like him, so I don't want to use him as a bad example, but I think he makes like $2,000 a second.
Damn, yeah.
When you compare that to sorry, I got distracted.
Carly?
No. No, okay, Carly's dad. And so lost my train of thought. Oh, and so I don't see a world where that gap really closes. I think we just need to bridge it, right? I think we need to bridge it in a way that makes sense to people, that kind of lowers the temperature. We got to take down the heat in the room quite a bit from where we are today. And AI will really be one of those needles that, for people at the very top who run these businesses, AI is going to throw their productivity like through the roof, right? They're going to earn so much more money as a result of artificial intelligence and just the productivity that comes as a result of it. Their employees are going to lose their jobs because a machine and robotics and all of that can do it better. So now those people who are already angry in the United States, that group is just going to grow quite a bit more over the years. And we're not talking like in the next 5 years or 10 years. We're talking about 20, 50 years. What's this world going to look like? What is a traditional job? How do you get paid? Do you get income from other streams, or are you still working, paycheck to paycheck? What happens to Social Security, right? Right now, that's really the only thing that people actually have to live on, in addition to anything that they might have tucked away throughout their lives. But if you look at somebody like, the truck driver community, how much were they able to tuck away, right? Like, or anybody in that class.
Workforce reduction for sure, man. For sure, I think. So yeah, like there is not like I mean, if I were to summarize it, it sounds and it feels. I'd say it's the right path for sure. It sounds and it feels like UBI is like inevitable. Like we would need to do this for a stable modern society at some point, because otherwise, I mean, as things get automated, yeah, the workforce is reduced for sure, and disparity between the people who own these processes and systems are gonna profit so much versus the people that don't. I know, like I've heard somebody be like, well, no, then everybody can be like their own entrepreneur because then they can just go ahead and use automation to start their ideas and businesses. But realistically, like tell that to like the grandma, like your friend's grandma, or who's about to retire, like, or just think about, I don't know, like you've come across people, like think about all the different sorts of lives you've crossed. Like you probably don't even think about it. Not everybody is like thinking like you, who might be like thinking very like from a professional mind state, or is well educated or well read. Like a lot of people just don't care, and they're not even gonna bother to learn AI. Like a sizable amount, probably like a good 30 to 40%. They're not gonna be entrepreneurs and start their own businesses leveraging AI. They're probably just gonna fade away and get left behind by the technology at some point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think it'll be one of those things that injecting, or rather like re-injecting this income through the lower classes of society. I think it'll help all the ships rise. Right? Like that money will be spent, like you said, in the local markets. I think the like American quilt that we were talking about, it'll bring people together. I think there's going to be volunteerism as a result of this. Just because that's what the human spirit ultimately craves for. But I am curious about the negatives. I think enough long-term tests haven't been conducted yet to see, well, what are the side effects? What are the negative downsides to this? But at the end of the day, if the positives outweigh the negatives, it'll proceed. It'll move forward.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Very excited for it.
For sure. Yeah. Just I don't think that the pick yourself up by the bootstrap is going to apply to everybody in the future. So
totally. And to your point that you were just saying, like, oh, well, why can't people just start their own businesses? Well, not everyone has that entrepreneurial spirit or that mindset or that drive. It's not like you can't go out and build a business now. It's far easier today than it was, 50, even 20, 10 years ago.
Without leaving your home, right? Yeah.
Without leaving your home. I think we are 100% entering the age of the creator, where if you can think it, there are AI tools that will help you bring it to fruition, bring it to life. Yeah, it'll lower the barrier of creation, but not every person is built that way, and we certainly don't have. We the way our schooling system works, it's not built that way. It's made like colleges and high schools. You sent me a really great video on this too. Colleges and high schools exist to make you a good employee, not to make you a good entrepreneur. Maybe 100%. That's something that should shift in the future, to kind of leverage this age of creation that we're entering. That's a topic for another episode, but very interesting. As usual, very, very excited and pumped about the future. Same. It's like talking about this stuff is very, it's comforting in a way, right? Everyone can wake up in the morning and kind of focus on the doom and gloom, and you spend 5 minutes on social media or turning on your TV, and you're bombarded with negativity. But there's so much potential out there, and it's like, how can we leverage all of these tools to not only make life better for ourselves? How can we make it better for society? How can we, take down the temperature of anger and in society, especially for a country that's like 300 years old. Are we improving? Are we going to continue to improve? Are we going to be around for another 300 years? Things like this are what people are betting on.
Pivotal moments, yeah. And I'll add also that I think after World War II, I mean, think of FDR. He did a pivotal moment. Social Security introduced. Also 90%. Not that I don't want to be taxed 90%, but had temporarily increased the tax to 90%. Like those type of he adapted to the times, and obviously those things came back down because they were not sustainable long term. But those, I guess, it's a topic for another time. But I wish we were more adaptable as well as a country, where it's like, oh, we do that with inflation a little bit, like, oh, let's drop and increase the rates. But like, I wish we would say, hey, there's large poverty or disparity in education. We're going to spend as a country the next 2 years, we're going to increase the taxes. It'll expire, don't worry. But as a country, as a unit, we're going to just increase the taxes and like just fund the public transportation and schools and education, and increase the opportunity or wages, even if somehow that was controlled, right? We're going to subsidize wages to some extent, where we can give people raises for the next 2 years, and then we'll start as things start to stabilize. We'll start to decrease the taxes once again. I know people, Republicans, you Texans. I'm sure you want
to. No, I was smiling because I was going to say Spencer for president.
Yeah.
But this is the type of thinking that that gets people excited. But it depends on which class you're in, right?
Totally.
All right.
All right.
Wrap it.
Wrap it. All right. We'll talk to you next time. This is In the Future, episode number 8. Bye.